Hello and welcome to We Want Women podcast that we are doing right here in the fantastic Big Condo Radio studio. We are absolutely made up to be here talking to our guest today, who we'll introduce in a second. My name's Nick.
And I'm Kai.
And we are from We Want Women. And We Want Women is a project that's based in Liverpool, and what we do is we try and bring a platform to support women in the performing arts, whether that's through gigs, events, and even talking circles as well. We're really passionate about giving voices to women in the performing arts and looking at the issues that surround that.
Absolutely.
So we are really, really excited to introduce today's guest. It is the fantastic Katie Jarman.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Excited to talk to you.
That's good to hear.
Yes, so please tell us who you are, what you do. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Katie Jarman. I also go sometimes by the Poorly Poet. So I'm a performance poet, and I tend to do work around identity and disability and sexuality and gender and things like that.
All of the great things.
Amazing.
And I've been performing, I started writing poetry when I was probably about 12, but I only started performing more seriously about 4 years ago.
Wow. So, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but presumably that's been a while.
Yeah. So I've just turned 28. So it was there was sort of a long gap in the middle where I didn't perform at all, or I didn't write at all. And then I went to a poetry night in Liverpool, and I just realised that
Just kind of sped things up a bit.
I was like, that's what I used to do. I really enjoyed that,
Wow.
and so I started again.
That's amazing. Can you give us some sort of insight into what happened and why it took so long for you to get to that point?
Yeah, I think so when I was younger, I wrote mainly, it was sort of like a therapy for me. So I would I found some of my poems recently and they were so emo, it was ridiculous. And
Mood.
And so it was just like an outpouring of, because I still maintain being a teenager is like the hardest thing ever. And especially when you're trying to figure out your sexuality and all these different things. So that's what my poems were like. They were all just these dark, trying to figure this stuff out thing.
How much are we identifying with this right now?
We couldn't
Literally
nod
just
further.
like, are you just in my brain?
Yeah, and then when I went to university, I just stopped writing, and I think it was because I get to that stage sometimes where like my mental health's so bad that I can't write and I can't be creative, and I just don't have like the spoons to do it, and so I just didn't do it, and I didn't write for a really long time. Once I left university, I started a master's, which I didn't finish in Chester, and for the election night back in 2015, when there was still hope.
Yeah.
They did the local radio station did like you could write scripts and stuff. So I did a satirical Take Me Out with all the like
Amazing.
main party leaders trying to find their partner based on their policies. And that sort of spurred me on to write a bit more. And then just a few months later, I saw this poetry, and I was like, wait, that used to be something that really helped me. Why did I stop writing? Why did I ever not do that?
Oh wow, what a story. That sounds fantastic. I mean, okay, you've obviously been through a lot of ups and downs there, and that's just sort of breezing across it to speak to us today, but that is amazing that you did that and that you've come back to it and you found a place for it. That's awesome.
I really identify with a lot of that stuff with the sexuality, and I love the fact that you said spoons, because I am a spoonie myself.
Yeah.
And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh my God. But I really identify with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's actually something that's really common, and I think especially amongst sort of more disadvantaged performers, is this idea that being creative is like, if you are a creative person, that's sort of your heart and your soul, but when you've got all these ideas about how you should do that the right way and how you should continue doing that, it's really a bit more challenging to
especially when you've got limitations and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, and to live up to the expectation you will set for yourself and that others will set for you as well.
Yeah. It's just one of those moments where everybody's just like, yes, you know. But I mean, I suppose that there'll be some listeners or watchers that maybe don't get that or haven't experienced it themselves. I mean, it sounds like something you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of that?
Yeah, so I think it's as well, it's sort of the arts and creativity is more now seen. I mean, you can see from sort of the government adverts about retraining that it's not seen as a viable thing to do. So at university I actually did a law degree, and I had every intention of sort of going into law, and then I just realized I hated it. Like, I hated everything about it. And so I ended up, mainly when I'm not performing, I work with young people, because that sort of is performing. But, you know, I know, although no one's ever said it, I know there were some people in my family who were like, Katie's got a law degree. I worked for Brooke, giving out free period products at one point, and my dad was like, you've got a law degree and you're stuffing tampons on a shelf. Like,
For free, though, Dad.
Yeah.
For free.
Yeah. And I mean, I know they're proud of me, but I think there was a little bit of, like, you're doing poetry. Oh, that's nice. Poetry's nice,
So
isn't it?
what? Sorry to interrupt. What's your opinion on this? Have you seen Scotland has made it? Is it they've done legislation now to make it tampon products free for all of the people who need it, basically. So and they've not even said women either. It's people who need it, and I just think that's fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. One of the problems I had when I was doing that work is that our funding came from a women's fund, but it was kind of difficult getting people higher up to understand that, like,
it's not just traditional women that need period products,
And it was like, and because we were only allowed to speak to girls and young women. It was like, well, they're not. Firstly, they're not the only ones who need to know anyway. But there are going to be plenty of people there who don't identify as girls and young women who do need these products.
Exactly. It's a really big. I mean, you know, we talk about this with people all the time, but that is a really big deal. And you know, in the performing arts, I think some of those issues are amplified even further. You know, and we sort of always come back to the fact that it's always kind of those issues that maybe women have had to deal with, but that there is a wider audience there, and people just pigeonhole it into something that they can understand better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, it's such, gender itself is like just ridiculous. It's like this made up thing.
It's so fluid. I honestly do feel like it's a bit more of a social construct than anything. I understand that there's the two biological sexes, obviously, but male and female.
Well, there's three. There are three, aren't there?
Sorry. There are three, but the gender spectrum itself, because like gender is so different from sex in some people's eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
There's just such a variation.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think it's getting much better, and like people are starting to understand it a bit more, especially like the younger generation. But it is something that obviously a lot of people just don't get, and they don't understand why it's a big deal, and why it's an issue. And it's I'd put some of it down to, because when I was younger, I was not a feminist, and I thought feminism was stupid, and that I put that down a little bit to growing up working class, because growing up working class, like, women had to do everything. So there was in my family, like, there was no, in my extended family and sort of my life, there was nothing of women not doing things or not being able to do things. And I was never discouraged from doing anything because you had to. Like, that was how you put your food on the table. There was no...
Try every avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was only when sort of I sort of got away from that a little bit more, that I really started experiencing what it was like to be a woman, even in this world. I remember one of my interviews when I was still working in law, and probably the one that really put the nail in the coffin for me, was I went for an interview to be a barrister's clerk, with the intention of doing my bar exam and then hopefully being a barrister after that. And they said that the interviewer said, well, you're 23 now, by the time you've done that you'll be 26, will you not be wanting to have a family then?
Oh.
And I was like, whoa, okay. No.
Women's bodies, or female bodies, are not purely on this planet just to be a vessel for more children. That is one thing that I've always said to anyone that comes across me. There's actually been times where I've told people that I don't particularly want a family yet, and they've said to me that, well, it's one of our main reasons to be here. And I was just like, excuse me, you do not know my situation. You could be talking to anyone with any kind of infertility issue, or even just downright do not want children. It's not down to them to tell people.
There's just so much, people. Isn't there? As you say, Kai, like
so
it is
many
that,
different reasons.
And as you're saying, and it is again, it's that stereotype, and it's putting people in boxes. It's completely glossing over an entire sex, gender, everything. It's just banging it all in one place, isn't it? And then having that expectation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, how has that kind of affected you in the performing arts? Is that something that you know, I mean, you said you kind of experienced that at a different part in your life due to class, and I completely understand that. So how has it been for you kind of within the performing arts?
I think one of the extra things that challenged me is a lot of my poems are about sort of sex, like they're about quite taboo things, and so there has been so there's been times where like I've got two poems which are all about like an incident with butt plugs that did not go well, but I think because of that there's an assumption about what I'm comfortable talking about, or what I'm comfortable with people saying to me, and so that's a bit of a challenge. And then as soon as sort of we had the pandemic started and everything, one of the events at Leeds that I'd occasionally perform at went online, and that was really like, it was basically all sex positive, a variety of genders and sexualities, and it was pretty much all about that. And our first ever Zoom got Zoom bombed. I don't know if you've heard of Zoom bombing.
I don't know what that really means.
So basically, it's when a group of people somehow get access to your
the code that you use
your
for
code
the Zoom chat.
for the Zoom, and they just like attack it. So a large group of them, and this was a large group of men as well, sort of signed on just as we were all, because it was just the performers at first. It was sort of 15 minutes before we were due to start, and a group of men signed on, and there was loads of them, and they were like saying really homophobic stuff, really transphobic stuff, really
Is this
sexist
in order
stuff.
to shut down the chat itself, or is it just to bombard you to the point where you're like, there's no point anymore?
I think it's just to like shut it down, because they wouldn't stop, and they were sending photos, and there was like they literally have like bomb noises and pictures of explosions and stuff, and so we were able to sort of react fairly quickly. But switch it off, and then we went private, and anyone who said they were going to attend got a private message with the information on. But it was really jarring.
It's so hateful, isn't it? It's just, the length that people go, the energy that people put into doing that.
Have they not got anything better to do with their lives?
Clearly not. They haven't.
It's ridiculous.
I know, it really is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think like we were all there to. It's sad for them, because we were all there to have a good time and talk about all these great experiences and all the things we enjoyed, and they were there. They just wasted their evening.
Being spiteful.
Yeah,
really,
just wasted their evening saying things they'd read on the internet, and it was really jarring. It was really difficult, especially to like get some momentum after that. But it was.
And do you feel like that was kind of like targeted because they knew you were a group of women? I'm saying women X, with the X, a group of women, and we're going to bombard this space because we know that you're a group of women? Or do you feel like it was just kind of a random target?
I think it was definitely. I think it was too late. I think it was because we were women and because of the topic, because we were talking about sexuality.
And so, sorry, I feel like I'm. But with that, I mean, the reason that people do anything, in my opinion, like that is it comes down to a core emotion and an incentive for them to do it, and it's for me a lot of the time it's fear
and ignorance. A lot of fear, aggression is down to ignorance. They've not been brought up in families that are comfortable with same-sex relationships and transgendered people and even like strong, powerful women that are successful and that kind of thing, and because they're so kind of shied away from it in their upbringing, they don't understand it, so they attack it when they're older. And it's just, education is the cure to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, to someone who doesn't know that, I don't think there's anything more terrifying than a woman really proudly standing on stage and talking openly about sex. You know, it's what we were saying about being put in these boxes, and that sort of, that old thing of lie back and think of England. Actually, for someone to stand up and talk about really positive experiences without shame, and with a group of people who laugh and enjoy it and understand it, that must be terrifying, especially if you yourself don't feel that way, especially if you've been told that this isn't something you should be proud of.
I think a lot of women are brought up to feel ashamed of their sexuality, whether that is straight or gay or bisexual or anywhere in between, but just having a sexuality and being a sexual person
Yeah, definitely
is shameful for women, apparently.
Yeah, I think even more, well, even just whatever your sexuality is, you're right, just being sexual, enjoying sex and being happy to talk about it is just, people just don't think that, you know, people are not brought up to do that, and they think it's a bit strange, and that's kind of sad, really. You know, I'm sort of coming back to when I was educating young people about periods and giving them products. I remember one of the incidents, I was teaching I think there must have been about a 13-year-old, and I had sort of the diagram of a vulva up on the board, and I sort of go through them all, and I was like, so we've got 3 holes, and I sort of bring it down to peeing, periods and pleasure, and poo.
Nice.
and I was like, of course you could, you know, different people will do different things with those, but that's the best thing.
That's really good.
Yeah, and so they were like, well, what, pleasure? And so I was like, yes, sex is supposed to be fun. And they all went, ew! And one of them fainted. Like, I'm not even joking. I was like, okay, so everyone leave. Yeah, and that's all I'd said.
From what? From just knowing that was. What,
yeah.
My God, I mean, that worries me. So that really.
Exactly. Yeah.
In this day and age as well, it's just.
I have. I'm working on the moment on a comedy poetry show about sex ed for grown-ups. And it starts with not only that, but also the knowledge that my nan's never given a blowjob, which
Wow.
she told me this in not as many words, but she said that she'd been engaged before. I think I must have been heartbroken or something, and she said she'd been engaged before my granddad. And the reason the engagement had broken down was because this man had come back from France and expected her to do what the French girls do. Which in those days, I mean, I wondered for ages what it was, but once I'd figured it out, it was oral sex.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, if she's never given oral sex, it's highly unlikely she's ever received it. And like, has she ever had an orgasm? Has she ever understood? Like, she has 5 children, and she had some miscarriages and some stillbirths as well. So my granddad had plenty, but did my nan, like, did she understand that's what it is? So on one side we've got that. And she lived in a fairly positive house. Like, my great grandmother helped women get as safe abortions as was possible in the Second World War.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's not like she lived in a house like as you would expect from that time. So on one end of the spectrum we've got that, and then on the other end of the spectrum we've got young girls who faint at the idea of sex being for pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, it just isn't talked about, or wasn't talked about, and it still isn't talked about enough. I mean, that sounds like great work you've done. I've also done similar work and gone in and talked about masturbation with both boys and girls, and you know, and it is a very strange area, isn't it, for them? And you're right, it's not just about young people, even though I completely agree, education is the way, but yeah, we need to educate adults, actually, and we need to bring the clitoris back into the medical book, and bloody well staple it there in the book.
Staple it there.
In the book.
Yeah.
draw one on a piece of paper and just staple it.
It's like, have you seen this person? Have you seen this clitoris? It really needs to be to be done, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit then about, you're going to perform for us today.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your performance and what it's about.
Yeah, so I'm going to probably do a couple of poems. The first one is in fact about that, and it's about enjoying sex and pleasure, and it's about how I didn't really understand that sex was for my pleasure until I was probably about 22. And I'd had plenty of experiences before then, but it was only then that I had this breakthrough, and I was like, wait, no, this is for me, this isn't for anyone else. And then the second piece is going to be about jellyfish and how I identify with jellyfish.
Okay.
From a mental health perspective.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at your fantastic poetry.
Thank you.
But my first poem is about the first time I ever realised what consent properly was, and I was about 23 when that happened. And this is a poem about that. I don't know what inspired me to reply to, "Hey baby," but I guess I was really bored that weekend. Within a week we'd agreed to meet, had to be somewhere public, chose the Christmas market, could have been romantic. But halfway there I realised I didn't actually know your name. Hoped I'd figure it out somehow along the way, and when we met that didn't seem to matter. Our connection was instantaneous. I don't know if it was a cold winter breeze in the air that night, or the way the Christmas lights danced above our heads, but our chemistry was undeniable. And so we talked and laughed and drank and danced and kissed, and it all felt like a blink of an eye. I was sat on your bed, your hand halfway down my top, when I stopped and blushed and bit my lip and said, "I think we should do this sort of thing." This wasn't technically true, but I've been taught to lie to boys like you if I wanted to protect my virtue. As for the rest of the details, well, a gentleman never tells. Suffice to say you became my warning story, the first fuckboy I ever encountered. A few months' worth of mistakes that me and my friend would laugh at, even half a decade later, but even half a decade later you were on my mind, wondered why I thought back to that night, your one hand resting on my thigh as I sighed and stopped and blushed and bit my lip and said, "I think we should do this sort of thing," and absolutely didn't mean it. Because although you laughed, you pulled back and said, "Do you want to?" And I said, "Yes." And for the first time, I meant it. You see, I've been led to believe my sexuality didn't belong to me, that it was a tool to be used by boys like you, broken and bruised. And I'd said yes before, but I don't know if I ever meant it. Yes, it meant, what other choice do I have? It meant I can't say no from underneath your hand. It meant if you'll just stop hurting me, then yes. But with you, yes meant yes. It meant yes, please. It meant touch me immediately. It meant I spent all night thinking how it might feel for you to fuck me, so yes. And it would be the same for all the folks that came after you. Yes only ever meant yes, and when I meant no, I said no, or fuck off. Or on one occasion, when no or fuck off weren't enough, shoved the guy off and slapped him across the face, and that was the end of that friendship. You were the first time I said yes and meant it, but this doesn't belong to you. This epiphany belongs to me, and I wish I could find a switch. Wish I could write it down for other girls who've been just like me, lied to about their sexuality, even though they roll their eyes and say they know exactly what they're doing. Thank you very much. I could say, oh, sweetie, when you look back on this without the rose-tinted spectacles of your youth, when you see those red flags, don't blame yourself the way I did. Your sexuality is not a tool. It is only to be used by you and for you. It is a precious flower for you to cultivate and grow. It is a beautiful gift for you to give to whoever you want, whenever you want, but only ever because you want. Thank you.
So tell us what your inspiration is when it comes to like a person or an object or a thing. Is there anything specific in your life that kind of really started your poetry going? Was it when you were 12, you said?
Yeah. So obviously we'd spoken about this being a question, and I tried to think of something cool to say, and then I realised that wasn't going to work. And so I thought about the first time I saw or heard something, a piece of art or music or something that really made me go, oh, wow. And it was I'm Not Okay by My Chemical Romance. Bit of a throwback there.
Oh, I loved My Chemical Romance.
So I was about 12, and my dad loves music, so he was watching the music channel, and I walked in and I saw this music video. And it was sort of like that movie in a coming of age film, that moment in a coming of age film where like they discover drugs for the first time or something. And it's like all like, that's all they can think about. That's what it was like. And I think it was because I've always been a very anxious person, and I was an anxious child. And then when I started my periods, I also got really depressed as well around my periods. But nobody really talked about that. Nobody talked about mental health. And so I didn't realize that was a thing. But then all of a sudden there were these young men, attractive young men, dressed in cool clothes that I thought were cool, like telling me they weren't okay and that was okay, and that they had these feelings and emotions and they could talk about them. And I think it really just like, it really resonated with me. And then then I started writing things like that, and that was sort of the downward or upward slope depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you, My Chemical Romance.
I know it's a bit, it feels like a bit of a throwback, to be honest.
I had a very similar experience with 21 Pilots.
Yeah.
Do you like 21 Pilots?
Yeah.
I absolutely love them.
For me, it was Alanis Morissette.
That
was
is
just
like,
that's just something about the way that they wrote about literally saying, I do feel a certain way. I do feel suicidal, or I do feel depressed, or I do feel really anxious. I've got headaches all the time and all that kind of stuff, and they've literally put it down into a song and made it sound like kind of like what Mika does. Mika's words are so melancholy, and then the music around it is so upbeat, and it just makes it sound really cool. But I kind of got that inspiration myself from 21 Pilots.
Nice.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? And just that that's they're artists, they're people. This is the industry that we're in, and how important it is, and also the impact on mental health. You know, I mean, it's been mad, to say the least, for everybody in some way or another. Some people have had better experiences and worse experiences over this last kind of epidemic. But I mean, have you noticed a change, or do you feel, how's your journey been for that? Yeah,
so I because of some of my like disabilities, I do have quite a bit of medical trauma, and it was something I'd never really addressed. I'd always assumed my trauma was other things. And when the pandemic started, it was sort of really jarring, and I was really upset by it, but I didn't sort of know why. And I started reading a book about trauma for other reasons, just to try and get some self-help, because CBT really does nothing for me, and all the therapists I was speaking to were like, try CBT, or maybe it won't happen. I was like, it's a pandemic, it's already happened.
My life is full enough.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, it's like, the pandemic's already, don't tell me a pandemic won't happen, it just happened. Literally, that's what's happening. So I felt like I had to do something for myself, and a lot of the trauma stuff in this book, there was like examples and what people had done to help themselves, and how like the science behind it, and it was really fascinating. But a lot of the traumas I sort of read, and I was like, well, that's horrible. And then I read one about somebody having a bad experience with an operation, and like I had a full-on panic attack and I couldn't breathe, and I sort of realised that a lot of the things I thought would bother me, I've dealt with, and I've had therapy for them, and they're sort of boxed away a little bit. But this is something I've never really attacked, because it's like my everyday as well. Even outside of a pandemic, that's my everyday.
It's just kind of brewing under the surface.
Yeah, and so it's hard to face that, because I can't box it away. It's a chronic illness. I can't be like, right, that's dealt with, because that's not how it works. And the same with mental health. It's always going to be a thing. I can't just be like, right, that's done with now.
Well, a lot of mental health illnesses are chronic, aren't they? It's just a lifelong issue a lot of the time. It's all about management and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's, the view as well behind mental health is that you take a pill and it gets better, like it's a bacterial infection, and it's like, that's not how it is at all.
Yeah, we don't understand the brain and what it does and the different things around it, which isn't great. But a lot of this book was about how you can use movement, and how so it was written by an actual psychiatrist, so somebody who like is paid to give people drugs primarily, who was like, actually no, they don't work. What works is talking therapies, what works is movement, what works is drama classes.
Sounds very holistic. And
yeah,
definitely. Who was the psychiatrist?
I can't remember. I know the book was called The Body Keeps the Score. And it was all about how our body responds, like on a physical level to it was talking about trauma, but I think
it's not Gendlin, is it?
No, I don't think so. It was an American psychiatrist. I just can't remember his name. But yeah, he I think that sort of responding to it physically, and it was about trauma, but I think it's worth people looking at it, because, and this is something I've been saying to a lot of people recently, like, we are all living through a traumatic experience this year. Even if you've been really lucky, like I have been able to continue working. I live with one of my partners, and we are very safe and secure, and you know, we're definitely not struggling for money. We've had each other. I haven't been able to see my family as much as I would like, or my friends, but you know, I've got the technological know-how to give them a call and stuff. So, but even for us, it's not been easy. And everyone is, at the moment, we're living through this shared traumatic experience of something nobody's really lived through in living memory before. And I think we need to sort of recognise that, like all the ideas at the start that you had to achieve something through lockdown, or you know, you have to have learnt a new language, or
you know what we will achieve. Surviving it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get on with it and survive it.
Yeah, one of the practices I've started is I do like a meditation to get myself to sleep. And before I do that, I like congratulate myself on something for the day. So that might be, oh, do you know what? You did a really good job. You cleaned the house today. And that might be, do you know what? Today you needed to rest and you rested, and that's amazing.
Today you need to shower.
Yeah.
Today you need to get dressed.
Yeah, and you did that, and you didn't have to. You could have stayed in, but you did it, and that's amazing.
It's making the choice, isn't it?
Small successes.
Katie Jarman, it has been absolutely a pleasure to chat to you today. Thank you so much for coming in. Again, I feel like we could continue forever. Absolutely. Where can we find you on Facebook? Or
so on Instagram, I'm on The Poorly Poet. And then on Facebook, it's just my ordinary Facebook, so just Katie Jarman at the moment.
We'll link that into this video. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, what another fantastic interview with Katie Jarman today. I feel like I want to go and read that book.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out what it is and link it as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching this podcast. If you want to find out more about We Want Women, we are on Facebook, and that is / We Want Women Liverpool.
And we're on Instagram as well, so don't forget to check us out there. Again, it is We Want Women / Liverpool.
Fantastic. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.